so welcome. So Creative Mornings is a global organization. It's in 223 chapters across the globe, 67 countries with 27,000 attendees per month globally. There's more than 10,000 talks online and a lot of video views. So we really are an expansive organization, and it's really cool. Every chapter around the globe is having a talk on critical this month, or whatever that theme of the month is. So like I said, this month's theme is critical. So here is the graphic design for that. And Creative Mornings has several sponsors, both global and local, so we'll take some time to thank them. The first one and our global sponsor is MailChimp. And for their 2022 benchmark report, MailChimp and Company surveyed over 2,000 marketing professionals from around the world, hearing from freelancers and agencies alike to see what they're doing to thrive in their work. A key theme kept emerging: pride. Over and over again, respondents said that no matter what challenges they faced over the last year, they remained immensely proud of their work, their businesses, and themselves too. So you can read some of those community proud moments and biggest successes of 2021 on MailChimp's website. And then next, we always like to thank our local partners. So first is Worth Higgins and Associates. They've actually got that wrapping paper contest. There's a flyer outside. Next is Ting, the Fralin Museum of Art, Willow Tree, UVA Arts, The Bridge, which is where we're at, and New City Arts. So definitely just so happy to have them as partners. And next I want to thank Pura Vida Photography, which is right there, and Jacob Cannon. So thanks again for capturing the event. Chef Antwon Brinson is the owner and founder of Culinary Concepts AV, which opens up opportunities for many who have never been able to access a career in the culinary arts. Antwon pursued a formal education in the culinary arts in 2001 at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. In 2006, he enrolled in a rigorous 3-year apprenticeship program under several master chefs at the legendary Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. During his time there, he managed the resort's 44-acre farm production kitchen and was the first apprentice to ever launch a new restaurant concept at the resort within a year of completing the program. In the years following his tenure at the Greenbrier, Antwon spent years working at prestigious restaurants like the St. Regis in Kauai, Hawaii, at the Westin in Palm Springs, California. He also spent time traveling and cooking through the British and US Virgin Islands and in 8 different countries. In March of 2018, Antwon founded Culinary Concepts AV to create a mission-based business that empowers people and cultivates individuals' passions and abilities by teaching life skills through the culinary arts. To date, Culinary Concepts AV has helped over 100 students learn important soft and occupational skills, as well as set long-term career goals. Most importantly, Culinary Concepts has helped place many of their students into new jobs with their employer partners. So please join me in welcoming Antwon.
Wow, that was really cool, because normally when people ask me what I do, I'm like, I cook. Well, first, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here today. I thought a little bit about what I wanted to talk about, and I thought maybe I'll just share how I ended up here, how I ended up in this space today, and how I ended up with my company and what inspired me. And I think that in order to be able to answer that, I like to pose a question. What drives you? So what drives you? Anybody, what drives you? What's your drive? Why do you do what you do? Why do you work for Willow Tree?
Now's not a good time to ask me that, because I've been struggling with that right now.
Okay. Ziki.
Well, developing others.
Developing others.
Yeah, we've been, privileged to have just enough to be able to sustain myself, but then others, like those in Kenya, folks who don't have much, making sure that they have something that they can move forward. So education as an example, work with schools in Kenya. So I found my purpose there about 7 years ago. So I've been working with schools and students in Kenya, empower them.
Okay, that's fantastic. Zach?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about vision. So just trying to try to add more clarity to things, to issues, to
Okay. And then one more. Joanna.
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't call it. This always happens.
It's absolutely okay to pass the mic.
I'll say, I think for me, what drives me is finding what's left behind, and helping to, either catch it up or bring it up, in wherever I am, in whatever medium also that might take.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So this is a question that we ask all of our students in the interview process, and it's a topic that we dive into when we get into our training program. And to kind of give you a high-level view of our training program, it's a life skills-based training program. And the goal with our programs isn't necessarily to teach you how to cook. The goal is to teach you how to navigate. In order to understand navigation, you need to understand yourself. You need to understand where you are. You need to understand what goals and what milestones you need to take to be able to achieve those goals. A lot of the times with our programs, people that get into the class, the only thing they've ever graduated is high school. And for some, they didn't even graduate high school. So completing this program with our certifications, this is like the first thing that they've ever completed in their life. So it's a big deal. So we take that very seriously. We want to make sure that we're not just giving them this tangible paper that you can go out and say, hey, I graduated this program. We want to make sure that you have goals that you can aspire to and have a roadmap to be able to achieve those goals. So to kind of understand how I ended up here, I'm going to take you back to when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I had a job at a restaurant. And, as I don't have the traditional story where it's like, I grew up in the pot in the kitchen, I cook with my grandmother at the stove. Yeah, I don't have any of that. My mom actually, she didn't like cooking. She loved culture, she loved cuisine, she loved taking us out, but she did not like being in the kitchen. So I don't really have that. My passion came from a job. I had a job as a dishwasher, I had an opportunity to work with wine. And I kind of fell in love with the intricacies of cooking. I fell in love with the learning how to make stocks and how you can use stocks to really elevate a dish and make sauces and the intricate plating. Now, by any means, this was not like a fancy restaurant. It was just a chef that was really passionate about cooking who took me under his wing and wanted to teach me some things. But it planted a seed. And I remember one night after a party, we were folding silverware. I was working with this server. And we were rolling the silverware. You guys have ever seen the little silverware rolls? And we're just having a general conversation. And she's like, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? Where do you want to go? Like you're starting to take this cooking thing serious. And I kind of opened up a little bit. And I was like, hey, I think I want to do fine dining. I was like, I think that's the direction I want to go. And at that moment, it was just a thought, right? Like, I think I could do that. Now, where I came from, there really weren't any like fine dining restaurants, on the level that, you think about fine dining. And not only that, I didn't know anybody in my community that had done anything like that. And I said that to her, and she looked at me and laughed. And, it kind of took me back a little bit, and she said, you would never make it to fine dining. No one like you ever makes it to fine dining. And when she said, no one like you, she was referring to a young black kid from a small, stereotypical black community with cornrows who spoke the dialect of his community, right? Like we didn't really, I always say we didn't speak English, we had our own ebonics, right? And I didn't fit the norm, right? And at that time, the idea was kind of like smoldering. But it was in that moment that she put gasoline on that thought, right? And it lit a fire under my ass. And it went from, I think I want to do fine dining to I'm going to do fine dining. So that was a definitive moment for me that really changed my trajectory. And from there, I ended up going to culinary school. I ended up, going to the Caribbean and traveling and working under certified master chefs, chasing this dream, this idea, because someone told me that it wasn't possible. Right? So I get to a point in my career where, I'm at a restaurant, I'm executive chef, my restaurant is voted best restaurant, right? And this is like a typical one, this is what I've been waiting for. And I'm there at the top. And the lesson that, I learned in that moment is that it's important to understand what drives you, but it's also important to sacrifice. What is that sacrifice? What is it going to cost you? Because it always costs you something. And in that moment, I'm at this great, time in my life, and I have no one. I mean, like, I lost touch with my friends, my family, my cousins. I miss births, I miss birthdays, I miss deaths. I miss so much because I was so focused on this goal, this ideology that I couldn't do something. And it was in that moment that I realized not only was I lonely, like, that was never really my goal. I was chasing this dream because someone told me that it wasn't possible. And I overcame all these barriers and anything that was in my way because I believed that I could do it, and I did it, right? It was great. But it was in that moment that I made a decision. I made a decision that I wanted to focus on something that was important to me. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back on it, that was the second most important decision that I made in my life. And that decision led me to, what do I really love? What do I love doing? Yeah, I like cooking. I love cooking. I be in the kitchen and everything, but I really love building people and teams. Like, that's my gift. That's what I do. I've done it throughout my career. That's what allowed me to be able to achieve that level. Yeah, you can cook, but it takes so much more than your ability to do something. You have to be able to teach that. You have to be able to inspire the people around you to think the way you think and move the way you do, to be able to believe into your vision so you can achieve those goals. So I slowly started to, I used to say started to descend down this mountain, but really I just decided to go a different direction. And which led me to, being able to work and build some of the best teams that I've ever worked with in my career, which brought me to Charlottesville. So I moved to Charlottesville to open up a spot here, and I kind of came into Charlottesville with this extremely naive perspective that, it's a small town, and fine dining, high-end restaurant, everybody wants to work in DC, New York, LA, everybody wants to work in fine dining, and not in Charlottesville. That's not the case. And, I had as my mom would say, come to Jesus moment, where I had put this ad out looking for cooks and chefs. We paid well, and I had 0 people apply. And talk about humility, it grounded me. And we ended up changing our messaging to, hey, are you passionate about cooking? Have you ever wanted to work in a professional restaurant? Send me your resume. And it was almost as if the floodgates opened. Like, everyone is applying, and no one had experience. But they're like, I want to work in a restaurant. I've always wanted to work in a restaurant. What a great idea. And I was like, all right. And so I find the folks, and we bring them in. And day one in the kitchen was, okay, this is how you hold a knife. This is how you set a cutting board. And from there, we taught them breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything. And I called them my day ones, right? So I continue on this journey of recruiting and trying to build this team and create this ecosystem with folks that have never worked in a restaurant before. And, I was successful with it. But there was a silver lining with all the people that were applying. One, they were all passionate and they wanted to be in cooking. 2, they all had been rejected in some shape, fashion, or form, and they genuinely believed that this industry wasn't for them. 3, most of them were minorities, and they wouldn't apply for jobs downtown because they didn't feel like they fit it. And 3, probably the most important thing, a lot of them had this dream and they couldn't figure out how to bring this to reality for themselves. And the question that I asked myself at that time was, are there any programs out there designed to take these folks that don't see themselves going to a traditional 2-year, 4-year college and get them in a program that will empower them to be able to achieve their goals? And when I really started to dive into it and look, first I started in Virginia, then I started Northeast Regional, then I went national, and I realized there were only 3 organizations at that time nationally that were doing anything remotely close to what I wanted to do. So as they say, when you get the entrepreneur bug, you kind of go to the cliff and look down and you jump, right? And some people walk away from it, right? And I literally jumped off a cliff. And I sat down with my resources and some folks that I look up to, and I got professors from UVA, and I said, this is my vision. I want to create a program that's not a traditional program. I want to create a program that's going to elevate people and make them think differently about cooking. And which brings everything full circle, because everything that I had went through in my career, from overcoming adversity to being able to achieve an impossible goal to being able to travel the world and work in all these places and experience these cultures and things, at that moment I realized why I had went through all that. It was to do what I'm doing right now, right? So I launched this company, and I knew in the beginning that I needed two things, right? So I needed folks that were gonna be my guinea pigs and say, hey, I wanna sign up for this new program. And I needed restaurants to say, hey, you know what? I wanna hire those folks that are going through your program. So what I did was I went out in the community. I had a suit and a tie on and a clipboard. And I went to over 50 restaurants, and I said, hey, if there was a program that was designed to elevate people and give them certifications and get them ready to work in a restaurant, would you hire them? I had about 30 chefs say, get the hell out of my kitchen. And I had, even more folks tell me, like, you know what, like, no, who's going to bring people in with a program like this? I don't have time for this, right? But then I did find about 15 to 20 people that said, you know what, if you had something like that, I would hire those folks. So I went into this with them, right? And our first program, I didn't know how I was going to recruit people. I literally, and I kid you not, I literally hit the pavement. I was in every community. I can tell you that on Cherry Ave, if you go down at about 3 o'clock, everybody's sitting outside, and it's like a community event, like everybody's just chilling, getting together, right? I can tell you, if you go over to about 5 o'clock, all the kids are using the house, and all the old heads are outside, and they got 40s in their hand, and they're just chilling, right? And I could tell you because I kept going, I kept showing up, kept going, and I would shake hands and talk to people and pass out flyers and get people inspired about this program. I mean, it got to a point to where people would say, hey, chef, how you doing? I'm like, hey, what's up? And I'm just walking down the street. I'm like, how do I know you? And they're like, oh, you were in my neighborhood a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, cool. So we go into this, and I find 6 candidates for this program. We ended up bringing in 5. And, when I first launched, there was a lot of folks out there that was like, they didn't understand what I was doing. So they were like, this is stupid. Why would you do something like this? You're wasting your time. Not only did we have 100% retention, we had 100% success with everyone passing their exams, and all the students got jobs. To this day, they're either employed still, but they all have upward mobility. They've all been able to either achieve management, sous chef, or even open restaurants in Charlottesville. So why do I share all of this? Why is this important? I think that every single person in this room, everyone has a gift. And we all go through these different things on our journey, but we don't know why we go through them. We don't know how they connect. We know that we've gone through some things and it might be bad. We've faced some adversities and we don't understand like why it's happening to me. Why do I have to go through this? And I can tell you that everything that you've gone through has a purpose for you, right? I can tell you that if it wasn't for that lady when I was a teenager telling me that I couldn't do that, I would have never taken that path. I wouldn't have gone as hard as I went, right? And if she wouldn't have told me that, I wouldn't have been prepared for the rejection that I faced on that journey of people saying, hey, I don't want to bring you on board. Or me feeling like I'm not good enough to work in a space because I'm black. Or me feeling like, you know what, only 1% of chefs actually make it to fine dining, and most of them are not, they don't look like me, right? I wouldn't be able to break down those barriers. I needed that. I needed to go through that to be prepared for what was coming next. So a big part of our program is really just inspiring people to think different, right? Getting people to change their minds about things that have happened or things that they feel like that are barriers. I feel like fear does 2 things. It's either gonna push you away from something or it's gonna make you go harder towards it, right? And our goal with our program is to try to inspire people to think differently about the things that have happened to them and hopefully inspire them to be able to go harder to be able to achieve those goals. Use that energy to be able to drive yourself to something bigger. We've been able to help over 100 folks through our training program. We have people that have open restaurants. We have people that are executive chefs. We have people that are sous chefs. We have people that have graduated our program, gotten out of jail, graduated our program, gone into leadership positions and hired students and given them opportunities. If you ever come by my kitchen, on the window it says reach one, teach one. And that's exactly what it is, But I think that to bring this all full circle, I think at the end of the day, if you take anything away from this, I would challenge you to think about what drives you. Really, what is driving you to be who you are today, to do what you want to do, to be able to achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. Like, really understand and hold on to that, because that thing could be the thing that's going to help the next person achieve whatever they're trying to achieve in their life. And that's it.
We've got plenty of time for Q&A if you've got any questions for Chef. I encourage you to grill him, because I have been in his kitchen and he does grill his students. I'm kidding, don't grill the Chef.
I really do.
That was a pun for anybody who wasn't aware that I just made a grill pun with the Chef. Anyways, but in all seriousness, does anyone have any questions?
Where's your restaurant? Or this,
It's a training school. It's on Barracks Road.
Okay.
Does everyone know where that new CVS is at on the corner? I'm in the plaza behind it by Oporto.
Next to the Mexican restaurant? Next to the Mexican restaurant?
Yes. Yes.
I just want to plug, I took my mother there as a gift for Mother's Day.
Mhm.
She and we had the place to ourselves, and one of your guys trained us.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic experience.
Awesome.
So anybody in the community can
Yeah.
take a class, right?
Yes, so we have training programs, team building workshops, and of course cooking classes. I mean, we're chefs, you can't do it without cooking classes. Cooking classes are right now on Saturdays. We're actually opening up Fridays and Saturdays next month. But everything that we do, regardless if it's a workshop or a cooking class, all of it is to support our training programs. We offer 100% scholarships for folks that are going through our training programs. We're very selective about who gets in the program, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people are successful, and we want to make sure that, you know, we're able to set them up. And I think that what that comes down to is, if you come to our class, to our interview, and you're like, hey, you know, I think I want to cook, you know, I think I want a job in a restaurant. This might not be the program for you, our training program. You might want to just take a cooking class. But if you're like, you know what, I want to cook, I'm looking for this opportunity, I want a job in a restaurant, our training program can develop that. We are all about trying to help people achieve their goals and remove barriers that are preventing people from being successful in life. Yes?
From what I've heard, it can be really emotionally hard to work in a kitchen.
Absolutely.
How do you prepare your students for that emotional challenge?
That's a beautiful question. This kind of goes back to what I said earlier, like with the program. Like, the first thing we tell folks in our interviews is, like, this is not a cooking program. Like, our goal isn't to teach you how to be America's Next Top Chef. It's to teach you how to navigate the kitchen. And a lot of times why people aren't successful in the kitchen is because they don't understand the language of the kitchen. How do we communicate, right? Like, how do you move in the kitchen? What is the chef looking for? What is this ideology around a dish? What's the difference between a menu versus a recipe, right? Like, is it your vision on the recipe, on this dish, or is it the person that created it, right? And being able to really understand that mindset, and by helping them understand that language, almost like being able to speak that dialect, they go into these spaces, they can go into any kitchen, anywhere, and be able to say, hey chef, what do you need? And it completely breaks down barriers versus making assumptions. I think a lot of the times you think that because you do something one way, that everybody else does it that way. And we all know that's not true, especially in the kitchen. You know, there's a million ways to make sauces, right? Your version of a small dice and my version is going to be different, right? And it's important to be able to ask more questions. And that is a big piece of the program, just setting them up to be able to ask the right questions.
Anybody else?
Hi.
My first is just a comment. When you started rattling off like 100% job placement, 100%, like that's unbelievable. Like I wanted to start clapping right then. It was really hard not to. And then like, I guess my question is, how do you get the funding to?
Great question, great question. So what we did was we partnered with, this is a workforce development program, and I'm like, this is workforce. So we partnered with the City of Charlottesville, Economic Office of Economic Development, same with the county. We're also partnered with the state labor, and they provide scholarships for folks to go through our training programs.
And you reached out to those, you found those resources and reached out.
I did,
Wow.
I did,
Yeah.
I did, you know, a lot of meetings.
Maybe time for one or two more.
Yeah, how was your first year as an entrepreneur? Because obviously you're coming from a paid job and you have jumped off the cliff. You're having all these meetings, you're walking the streets, you're meeting people, but the money is not yet coming in. So like, to build that first year, usually.
Do you want the real
Makes-
answer to
makes
that?
or breaks.
Do you want me to give you the real raw answer to that? All right, here's the real raw, no holds barred answer. I launched my company in, you know, as a chef, you're always operating like this. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, room service, banquets. Like, you're always like this. You're always running multiple things, right? And you never really have the time to be great. You know, you never have the time to be excellent, right? You're always just good enough. Like, I got that done, I got that done. And to the public, it's just like, or to your bosses, it's like, you're doing awesome. But you know that you can do so much better, but you can't because you're doing so much. So my thought was, what if I was to take all of that energy that I have spread out like this and focus it on one thing. How effective and how efficient can I be, right? So when I jumped off the cliff, I was extremely intentional with my time. I went from getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning, going to bed at about 2 o'clock in the morning, typical chef time, to getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and getting into bed by 8, right? I completely shifted how I use my time. I created time blocks. I did a lot of networking. I started out, my email list was maybe 50 people. And I would go to networking events that I wasn't even supposed to go. I'm at tech events, networking with people, and I'm like, hey, I got this culinary thing going on. And they're like, why are you here? This is a tech event. And I'm like, I don't know, you're creative, I'm a creative, let's connect, right? And my first year, every single business card I got, I followed up with a meeting. Every single one, either a phone call or a sit-down meeting. And at the end of the year, I had a network of over 5,000 people. And I set audacious goals, extremely audacious goals. One of my goals was, if I can't make money in 6 months, I'm gonna quit, right? Because I'm like, if I can't make money doing this, then what am I doing it for, right? 2, I wanted to buy space my first year. Didn't have the money to do that either, didn't know how that was gonna happen. And 3, I wanted to graduate at least 2 programs that year, right? And at that time, I didn't have a space, I didn't have anything. All I had was this idea. But I knew one thing about me that I did have. I knew I was always going to be the hardest working person in the room. And I knew that it was my dream and my goal. And if I wanted anybody else to believe in it, then I needed to believe in it more. And I knew I needed to convince people how big this was going to be. And that, for me, was it. That's all I needed. And I went at it, man. I had meetings with the city. I had meetings with the county. I got rejected. I went back, had meetings again. I got rejected. I kept showing up. I kept showing up. I kept showing up. I kept showing up. And eventually, they were like, you know what? Maybe this guy's onto something. Let's pilot one program and see what happens. And I was like, all right, it's almost like that guy on the sidelines, put me in the game, coach. And I was like, they gave me the shot, and I made sure I didn't miss, and that was it. And my first year, not only did I achieve my goal of finishing 2 programs, I finished 3. I bought my space within 8 months of launching my company. Now, granted, my first and second year, I finished in the red. I completely finished in the red. But the goals that I set, I crushed my goals, right? But that all started with that mindset, right? I'm gonna be intentional about my time. I'm gonna be intentional about how I'm investing my time. And I think that on this journey for me, I've tried so hard to not only set these extremely high goals for myself, but I've always tried to make sure that it was aligned with my mission, right? What's driving me at that moment, right? What am I doing this for, right? When I graduated class, or my team graduates a class, and we see that success, that's fuel on my fire. Like, yeah, let's go harder. Let's do it better. How can we improve this? How can we help more people? How can we change the culture, right? And I would say, so my first year, that was that was it, man. I had a goal and I just went for it.
Congrats.
Yeah, man.
What drives most of your students?
That's a very good question. I think that in the beginning when we asked that question, it's superficial. The answer is always superficial. I had someone respond to me, well, I think it's my cat. This is real shit. I can't make this shit up. And I was like, your cat, tell me more, you know? And I don't know, my cat, I love my cat. And I'm like, well, how is that driving me? I don't know, right? And I think that a lot of the times, like, people don't really think about that question. But on the journey of I always say our program is a journey of self-discovery, right? And on that journey that they're going through, and to kind of break down, like each week has a different life skill, right? So week 1 is integrity, right? What does integrity look like to you in your everyday life? What does it look like for you to get it? What does it look like to receive it? What does it look like in the kitchen, right? When you put your food up in the window, do you have integrity with that dish? When you're cooking your protein, do you have integrity with that, right? So we kind of, each life skill, we kind of talk about it. And as they're going through this journey of just discovering things and concepts about life, they're discovering a lot about themselves. It's a lot of conversations between each other. Like, they leave the class and they know about each other personally, deeply, intimately, right? There are times in class where people are crying. There's times in class where people are laughing. I mean, it's amazing. So to answer that question, in the beginning of the class, typically most people don't really know. But by the end of the class, it's, you know what, like, I'm doing this for my kids. You know, I'm doing this because I was incarcerated for 10 years and I missed out on my life and I don't want to miss out on anything else. Like, they really able to attach like their drive to something that's happened or something, a moment that changed their trajectory that led them to the class at that moment, right? But it's an evolution of just going through the class. We do this thing called a journey map, and we do it on week 5. And week 1, you know, it's an interview. We go through and we ask that question. And then week 5, when they do their journey map, it's absolutely phenomenal, like the answers that they have. I mean, it's so deep and profound. I mean, sometimes when they're reading their journey map out loud in class, they just start crying because they're like, I never thought about this. I never thought about it like this. So, I mean, it's interesting to see how people evolve and as they go through our classes.
All right. I think that's all the time we have for questions.
Cool.
Just one more. What do you love? Because it popped in my head and I was like, I think it would be a good final note.
Yeah.
What do you love to cook?
That's a loaded question, man. It really depends on, I mean, one thing I love about Virginia is, like, we have so many amazing farmers that grow so many amazing things. So it really depends on what's in season. You know, like I went to the market, this is a few weeks ago, but I found these cherries and I went freaking crazy. Like, I went home, I made cherry turnover, I made cherry pie. I made a cherry street, and I was just inspired by the food, right? So it really depends on like what's in season. I don't have like a go-to dish, you know. I'll go from Indian to Ethiopian like that. So
Cool.
yeah.
All right, that was the last question.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for coming.